The morning fog rolled gently over the narrow forest road, wrapping everything in a soft, gray blanket. The towering trees stood like silent giants on both sides of the road, and the only sound was the gentle purring of a yellow school bus engine. Mr. Lawson, a friendly man in his 50s with short gray hair and a thick winter jacket, gripped the steering wheel with both hands. He had been driving this route for over 20 years, and it was always quiet and peaceful. But today, something felt different. As he rounded a familiar curve, his eyes widened. Two large German shepherds stood in the middle of the road, directly in front of his bus. They weren't strays. These dogs wore police vests, the kind with bold white letters spelling K9 unit. Mr. Lawson pressed the brakes gently, and the bus came to a slow stop just a few feet away from the dogs. He stared, confused. The dogs didn't move. They didn't bark or growl, but they weren't letting anyone pass. Mr. Lawson honked the horn twice, short and polite. Still, the dogs stayed put. Behind him, a dozen elementary school children, ages 6 to 10, were chatting, laughing, and swinging their legs from their seats. The moment the bus stopped, the noise turned into whispers. The children noticed the dogs, too, and they leaned against the windows, tried to see what was happening. "Why aren't they moving?" whispered a girl with pigtails. "Are they mad at the bus?" asked the boy, his nose pressed to the glass. Mr. Lawson frowned. Something wasn't right. These dogs weren't just sitting, they were guarding. Their eyes were alert, their ears perked, and their bodies stiff like statues. He opened the bus door slowly and stepped out, his boots making a soft crunch on the damp pavement. "Easy, boys," he said gently, raising his hands to show he wasn't a threat. "What's going on here?" One of the dogs gave a low bark, not aggressive, more like a warning. The other turned his head toward the woods for a second, then looked back at Mr. Lawson. The driver followed the dog's gaze, peering into the forest. The thick trees and heavy fog made it hard to see, but he thought he heard something, maybe a branch snapping or a faint rustle. His heart skipped a beat. Was someone out there? He stepped back onto the bus and picked up his radio. "Base, this is Bus 27. I have 2 police dogs blocking the road about 5 miles from the school. They're not moving, and I think they're trying to tell me something. I need assistance." The static on the radio crackled. Then a voice came through. "Copy that, Bus 27. Sit tight. We're sending someone your way." As he waited, the children grew more curious, and some were beginning to feel a bit scared. Mr. Lawson tried to keep everyone calm. "It's okay, kids. These are good dogs. Police dogs don't act like this unless there's a good reason. Let's stay in our seats and be quiet for now, all right?" He kept an eye on the dogs, still standing firm in the road. Whatever was going on, Mr. Lawson had the strong feeling that these dogs were trying to protect someone or something, and until help arrived, he wasn't moving an inch. The school bus sat quietly in the middle of the forest road, its yellow paint slightly dimmed by the heavy fog around it. Mr. Lawson kept glancing at the 2 police dogs still blocking the road. They hadn't moved an inch. One stood firm with his eyes on the trees, while the other looked back at the bus every now and then, as if checking on the people inside. The children inside had gone from playful to puzzled, and now they were mostly silent. Their eyes stayed on the 2 dogs, and a few kids started whispering stories about why the dogs might be there. Mr. Lawson didn't mind the whispers. He was more focused on listening, not to the kids, but to the sounds outside. Something in the woods was off. Then, the sound of tires rolling slowly over the road broke the silence. A sheriff's SUV came around the bend, red and blue lights flashing silently. It pulled up behind the bus, and the door opened. Out stepped Deputy Riley, a young woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and a calm way of moving. She approached the bus slowly and looked at the dogs. "They're from K9 Unit Bravo," she said as she joined Mr. Lawson outside the bus. "Both trained for search and rescue. What are they doing here?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out," Mr. Lawson replied. "They showed up out of nowhere, just stood there. I tried honking. Nothing. They're guarding the road like something dangerous is nearby." Deputy Riley crouched down and called the dogs by name. "Axel, Bruno, what is it, boys?" One of the dogs, Bruno, turned to her and barked twice, then ran toward the woods, stopping at the edge. He looked back, waiting. The other dog followed. Deputy Riley frowned. They're trying to lead us somewhere. That bark, that's the signal they use when someone's missing. Missing? Mr. Lawson felt a chill in his spine. Deputy Riley nodded. We had a report early this morning. A little girl wandered off during a hike with her family. They lost sight of her near the edge of these woods. She's only 7. Mr. Lawson's mouth went dry. 7? That's the same age as some of my kids on this bus. Bruno barked again, then vanished into the trees. Axel stayed at the edge of the road. Waiting, Deputy Riley turned to Mr. Lawson. Keep the kids on the bus. Lock the doors if you have to. I'm going in with them. Be careful, Mr. Lawson said. It's thick in there. She nodded, upholstered her flashlight, and followed the dogs into the woods. As they disappeared into the trees, Mr. Lawson returned to the driver's seat and grabbed the radio again. Dispatch! This is Bus 27. The deputy is following the K-9s into the forest. Possible missing child situation. I'm staying with the kids. The voice on the other end responded quickly. Understood. Stay alert. More backup is on the way. Inside the bus, the children watched the trees with wide eyes. Some hugged their backpacks. Others held hands quietly. The mood had changed completely. They weren't just on their way to school anymore. Something real was happening outside. Something serious. And even the youngest kids could feel it. Deputy Riley moved carefully through the woods, her boots pressing gently into the wet ground. Bruno and Axel led the way, moving quickly but stopping every few seconds to check behind them, making sure she was still with them. The trees were tall and tightly packed, their trunks wet from the morning mist. The deeper she went, the darker it got. The fog was thicker here, and even though it was morning, it looked like late evening under the heavy canopy of branches. She kept her flashlight pointed ahead, lighting up the narrow path that only the dogs seemed to know. Her other hand stayed near her radio, just in case she needed to call for help. Suddenly, Bruno stopped. His ears perked up, and he turned sharply to the right, barking loudly. Axel joined in. Riley raised her flashlight and pointed it in that direction. That's when she saw it. A small pink shoe halfway stuck in the mud. Her heart skipped. She hurried over and picked it up. It was tiny, just the size for a child. She looked around and noticed small footprints leading deeper into the woods. The ground was soft, and the footprints weren't old. Someone had been here recently. Good boys, she whispered to the dogs. Find her. The dogs barked again and took off at a slow run, following a trail of prints and sniffing the ground. Riley followed as fast as she could, stepping over roots and pushing branches out her way. Every few minutes, she called out, "Hello? Is anyone there? My name is Deputy Riley. I'm here to help." At first, there was no answer, only the sound of birds and wind. But then she heard something faint, like a whimper. She stopped and listened. There it was again. It was coming from behind a fallen log. She ran forward and found a little girl curled up in a ball, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees. Her clothes were muddy, and her face had tears running down her cheeks. She looked up with wide, scared eyes. "It's okay," Riley said softly, kneeling beside her. "You're safe now. I'm here." The girl didn't speak at first. She looked at Bruno, who gently licked her hand. Then she whispered, "I got lost." "I know, sweetheart," Riley said, "but you're not lost anymore. These dogs found you. They're heroes." Carefully, Riley picked the girl up and wrapped her in a blanket from her emergency pack. She used her radio to call in. "Dispatch, this is Deputy Riley. I've located the missing child. She's cold and shaken, but she's alive and responsive. We're heading back to the road now." The walk back took longer because she moved carefully, making sure the little girl was warm and calm. The dogs stayed close on both sides, like bodyguards. As they neared the road again, Riley could see the yellow school bus through the fog. It hadn't moved. Mr. Lawson was still inside with the children, waiting just as he promised. When they stepped out of the woods, the children inside the bus gasped. Some of them clapped. Others pressed their hands to the windows, watching in amazement as Riley carried the girl to the back of her vehicle. Mr. Lawson stepped outside, speechless, and gave Riley a small nod of respect. "Thanks to those dogs," she said, smiling faintly. "They knew before any of us." As Deputy Riley gently placed the little girl into the back seat of her patrol car, she covered her with another warm blanket and handed her a bottle of water. The girl clutched a small stuffed bear that had somehow stayed with her during her time in the forest. Her face was still pale, but she looked safe now, and most importantly, she wasn't alone anymore. Bruno and Axel sat nearby, their eyes on the girl, calm and proud like they knew exactly what they had just done. They had saved a life, and they didn't need applause to understand their value. Their job was to protect, and they had done it perfectly. Mr. Lawson stood beside the bus, his arms crossed as he watched the scene. The children on the bus began to chatter again, this time with excitement and relief. They understood that they had witnessed something special. For the rest of their lives, they would remember this day, not as a day they missed school, but as the day two brave dogs stopped a school bus and helped rescue a little girl from the deep, cold woods. Soon, another police vehicle and an ambulance arrived, lights flashing silently through fog. Paramedics came to check on the girl, gently taking her from the patrol car and wrapping her in a thermal blanket. One of the paramedics gave her a small smile and whispered something that made her nod. She wasn't crying anymore. She looked around as if just beginning to realize how many people had come to help her. Deputy Riley stood beside Mr. Lawson and watched the medics work. "If you hadn't called it in, we might have missed this window," she said quietly. "The fog's getting thicker. If they'd waited even an hour longer, we may not have found her before nightfall." Mr. Lawson gave a slow nod. "I wasn't sure what was going on. But those dogs, they weren't going to let anyone pass until someone listened." Riley looked at Bruno and Axel, both now calmly sitting beside her SUV. They're trained to sense things most people can't. They pick up fear, confusion, danger. They knew that little girl was close. They knew she needed help. As the emergency teams prepared to leave, one of the paramedics gave a thumbs up to Riley. "She's stable. We're taking her to the hospital for a checkup, but she'll be fine." Riley smiled for the first time that morning. She turned to the dogs and knelt down. "Good job, boys," she said, giving them both gentle pats. "Real heroes today." The children on the bus gave a small cheer as the dogs looked toward them, tails wagging just a bit. One little boy opened the window and shouted, "Thank you, doggies." Soon, the road was cleared, and Mr. Lawson started the bus again. As the bus slowly moved forward, every kid waved at the officers, the paramedics, and the two dogs that had guarded them so bravely. The fog began to lift just a little, as if the forest itself was releasing a long breath of relief. Mr. Lawson drove on, glancing in the rear-view mirror once or twice. "Well, kids," he said with a small smile, "I think we all learned something today. If a dog ever blocks your way, maybe, just maybe, you should stop and listen." And with that, the school bus rolled gently down the road, carrying a group of children who now understood that even quiet mornings could turn into something unforgettable, all because two police dogs decided to take a stand.